Alrighty, to make sure that we stay on schedule, we will go in and get started. So thank you all for being here today. We will start with the pledge. Allison, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Was this meeting properly advertised?
Madam Chair, this meeting was advertised in the Pensacola News Journal on April 9th, 2026, in the board's weekly meeting schedule.
Great. Thank you so much for that information. I want to thank everyone for being here today. This is a huge community project and a once-in-a-lifetime project for all of us. And it's rare we get the opportunities to invest such a major amount of money into something that could change our entire community for the better and that we'll all be able to see the benefits of. So I appreciate everyone being here today to take the time to be a part of that conversation and help steer that in the right direction.
Good morning, and I want to just say thank you to everybody. I'd love to see almost a full house today, so excited to talk about this topic and see what we can do to move a big project forward for our city. Thank you to Commissioner Hoffberger and the County Commission for being willing to do this joint session. I'm very hopeful that today, we're able to get together with a plan to move forward in some way, shape, or form in a positive way for our city. So I really look forward to our discussion, to the information we're going to have today, and just to something that we can action when we leave here. So thank you.
Yeah, quickly, again, thank you. You see the full house, and it's because this matters to us as a region, as a community, and to put us in the best position to be successful. So, again, thank you to Wes and county staff. You see what it takes to put on something like this to get us all in the same room. Looking forward to, from the administration standpoint, just try to be the best facilitators we can to help move this project forward in any way that we can with the council, with the county commission, and looking forward to the conversation. So thank you.
For the sake of time, we have asked that our presenters keep it to 20 minutes apiece and that we hold questions until the end of the presentation. Our first presentation will be from Michael Capps, presenting in person on behalf of Legends Global. Michael? It appears as if Michael might be running behind. We will switch 1 and 2. We can go on and move to the Pensacola Convention Center analysis by WT partnership. If you guys are ready to go, thank you so much for joining us in person or virtually, hybrid? In person. Wonderful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to invest in our community.
I assume this is okay, standing right here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right, thank you. It's lovely to be in your city again. I'm Sana Dadaboy. I'm with WT Partnership. Here's my colleague, Jose. I'll have him introduce himself quickly, and then we'll start running through the presentation.
Jose Davila, Senior Vice President with WT Partnership.
So we'll kick this off with just saying that what we presented is what we think a strategic framework for analysis, and we're hoping that this provides you with a way of looking at an overall development as opposed to just picking up pieces from it and saying that, let's look at this, let's look at that. We're just hoping that overall you'll look at the thing as a whole, because that's what we did. So our strategic framework focuses on long-term implications of development. It also looks at high-level comparison of delivery approaches, an overview to what's possible under different scenarios, how those scenarios will impact the entire area. And then this is a planning tool, but it is not a final procurement documentation or final recommendation to go with a particular structure. Our project priorities were our if you could say they were our guardrails for this project. These aligned really well with what came out of the resident survey and the stakeholder engagement. So that was nice to see that the priorities were aligned with what the people of Pensacola wanted. So we looked at infrastructure impacts outside of the site, including the Grand Hotel, the Bay Center, and Tech Park. We looked at improving safety, mobility, and connectivity. We also considered preserving the historic character of the society, as well as advancing public engagement and community alignment. Another critical thing that came out of this was job creation and local economic growth, as well as identifying funding sources. So these were the guardrails with which we evaluated this project. So it's a very interesting site, if I could call it that, because you have the Grand Hotel, and then you have the Tech Park, you have the PBC, and then you have the site itself, which a part of it is owned by the city, and then a part of it falls kind of under with the PBC site. So overall, you have about 6.84 acres, but you have different ownerships across the board. So no doubt that to execute anything, it would be very challenging because of that. But at the same time, we still thought it was worthy considering all these different parcels, considering your water connectivity, considering so many things that are going really for the Bay Center. And that's why we believe this is a transformational opportunity, just beyond one site, looking at the whole area and activating a whole district. So in our analysis, if you look at our more detailed report, which is about 150 pages, we actually start with a top-down overview. Think of it more like a funnel that we start looking at the federal level, then we move down to the state level, and finally we move down to the county and the city level. The federal highlights trends such as tightening immigration, which leads to labor shortage. We look at higher construction costs. So overall, just higher cost of a project. But then you move down to Florida and you see a story of growth. You see a story of vibrancy. You see people moving in constantly, as I'm sure is a lived reality for all of you. So, definitely very encouraging for development. And then more so when we moved down to Pensacola, we saw tremendous sort of potential in the retail sector. Your hospitality sector is also very healthy. And then multifamily, while currently solid right now, it is at risk of an oversupply. And then office, we've seen just generally being challenging everywhere post-pandemic as people have moved into hybrid structures and work from home has really taken center stage. So with that, we focused on the retail, hospitality, and sort of an offshoot of retail, F&B, food and beverages. Here are some emerging trends and potential for private funding. Now, this is not specific to Pensacola. This just shows you what is going on currently in these three markets, how they're being developed, how people are looking at them as they're moving forward. So for ice rinks, especially in warmer climates, what we noticed was that a good partnership, a solid partnership can really activate your ice rink. I think the current job that ASM does with Pensacola Bay Center is a testament to that having sort of the ice flyers, having that regular programming can really be a good idea for launching an ice rink. Moving on, you have an indoor sports complex. These are typically county-led models with very defined payback sources. We've given some examples over there of a few indoor sports complexes that are currently in play or at least in the planning stage, like the Volusia County one. And then lastly, we move to the convention center. What we've seen is that convention centers at standalone facilities do underperform. We see the ones that are more as part of a district activation perform much better. And you could say probably the same thing for all three of those, that the more revenue sources you build around it, the higher foot traffic you build around it, the better your facility will do. So as I mentioned, we looked at three distinct sectors. We looked at hospitality, food and beverage, and retail. And then we looked at the visitor profile for ice rink, indoor sports complex, and a convention center. Just a point to preface here is that with a convention center, we're looking for regional conventions. So we're looking at anywhere between north of 12,000 to 15,000 attendees coming to these. And so our base case is that you would be filling up your entire sort of city with these conventions, and all your hotel partners would be able to take part of it. Ice rink, because of local visitation, it has the most limited impact. It does have the potential to attract out-of-town teams, However, that is more seasonal in the south than it is if you were doing this up north. For the indoor sports complex, we see a moderate ADR with youth athletes and coaches, just shorter tenors, and they reliably fill mid-price hotels. For convention center, you see higher ADR, higher corporate spend, as well as filling up of mid, upper, and luxury hotels. But like I said, if we're doing an event that is between 12,000 to 15,000 with Pensacola's current supply of about 11,000, we're pretty sure that if those types of events take place, everybody would be able to benefit from this. So in assessing the feasibility of a convention center, we looked at demographic trends. I think next to the PBC site, the 2.1-mile radius has high incomes and high population growth. That's a positive indicator. We looked at accessibility, which is ease of travel. And I think we have a few more slides about this, but we do think that Pensacola, compared to its regional peers, has a lot more accessibility. We looked at corporate presence and major employers, including your Navy. So these would be great places for you to start also with filling up your programming. We've talked a little bit about hotel supply. That's another thing that we looked at. Then we looked at hotel and retail activity and tourism drivers that would influence visitation. So what we're trying to do is hopefully do some placemaking, create a space where if people come for a convention, they're happy to invite their families over and spend the weekend enjoying your lovely city and the amenities that it offers. A little bit more on accessibility and what is expected as we move forward in 2031 with about 2 million in employment. And here is accessibility compared to your regional peers. So you can see that Pensacola ranks a lot higher than the surrounding airports. So this points to the fact that currently people are probably landing here and then driving to other destinations for their conventions, whereas you could offer them a convention center right here, and they would probably attend it here. So this is a regional sort of look at what's around. Lastly, we looked at what is currently being offered in terms of square footage, and we want to highlight that Pensacola currently significantly has lower square footage. So we're looking at about between 25 to 30% lower average size. And we've talked to the Hilton downtown as well. Sometimes they have to open up the other hotel, and their convention experience ends up looking a little bit more like people scuttling back and forth. Which is less than desirable. So there was definitely a documented need for larger facilities, more modern facilities. We do also want to emphasize that regional competitors are improving their offerings and increasing their airport and their amenities. So we see significant demand drivers, but we do understand that the convention center cannot function without an adjacent hotel. And at the same time, there are some risks, which include parking challenges. I think that was another one that emerged very strongly from the stakeholder engagement and resident survey. So you cannot really address, we feel, a facility without considering how it's going to impact parking and what you're going to do with the displaced parking. And here's a little bit about our resident survey that we did. I know there have been some questions about how we did this, and so it was a random sample. It was mailed out using the city's portal to as many residents, and nearly anyone who was within the city could take it, and here are our findings. We saw the highest demand for a mixed-use type of development, live, work, and play. We saw second highest demand for community activities, and then infrastructure improvements, parks and green space, and then we had a few others, but largely with mixed-use development, you can address community activities as well as infrastructure improvements and parks. So here's a pie chart of what we received for convention center, ice rink, and indoor sports complex for strongly support, neutral, and oppose. The convention center came out leading very favorably for strongly support and support. The ice rink was a little bit of a polarized option with as many as strongly support. We had about the same people who were opposed to it, or you see the big black pie over there, that's the neutral. And then indoor sports complex was clearly a second favorite that emerged. So our key takeaways for this was the vision for the district and strong support. We saw that if this were to move forward, we would need the city, county, and tourism and industry to align preservation of natural assets as well as modernized facilities and trade-offs. Here is our program about what the convention center looks like. It's about 54,000 square feet of exhibition space. I think we've emphasized repeatedly that we would like that this should be a modern, modular sort of facility that can house multiple events. The more events that it has, the more you can fill with it. So we see indoor sports as a demand. We would definitely encourage a high community programming schedule. Here are your pathways to development. We laid out 4 scenarios. So you have number 1, where you just build a standalone convention center. It's got limited impact. Then we have a hybrid delivery, where you build a convention center and you have a hotel. Number 3, you have a P3. So you deliver this alongside retail or mixed use and really kind of activate that area. There would be some pre-activation and some activation that then bleeds right into the project. And then lastly, we considered scenario 4, which incorporated safety and infrastructure improvements. Scenario 4 also unlocks federal grants and federal funding, as well as a wider role for FDOT. I would, for scenario 2 onwards, so scenario 2, 3, 4, the risks and the benefits all carry from one to the other. So if you have benefits that are outlined in scenario 2, those benefits are implicit and assumed in scenario 3 and 4, whereas for scenario 1, that kind of is a standalone case. And here we highlight the next steps. This is very broad, and it does not at this point assume that you've chosen a scenario. These would happen regardless of the scenario that the city and county ultimately choose to advance. Those are to confirm the project objectives and success metrics, determine site control and zoning clarity. As mentioned earlier, we do understand the challenge that you have different sites, you have different ownership, so we do not anticipate this being an easy process, but nevertheless, it is probably required if you want to activate the entire district. Refine and confirm a clear project vision. Transaction structuring, so if you're adding in a hotel or a mixed use or retail or anything else, how are you gonna capture those revenues? So, and hopefully have those feedback into the upkeep of the Bay Center as well as the convention center, so to avoid that deferred maintenance log. Depending on project structure, we gave a few revenue considerations. So this is what we would be structuring out whenever we decide a path forward. Finally, we would advance to a market sounding or an RFI to test the market's appetite for this. We attached 3 project examples. The Wilmington Convention Center is a standalone facility. It has a waterfront similar to Pensacola, and then the other 2 operate with an arena, kind of like PBC. So that's why we chose these as samples that maybe Pensacola could consider in their development. And compared to here's a comparison for the characteristics of those facilities and their markets compared to Pensacola. And then finally, we provide some pictures and some information. So as you can see, the Wilmington Convention Center is operated by Legends. They're probably very familiar with it. And you have the Resch and the Green Bay, Wisconsin. And then finally, the exhibition hall. I hope that was under 20 minutes.
You did perfect. Thank you so much. And then you'll be around for questions after?
Yes.
Okay, great. We appreciate it. Michael Capps, are you ready to present on behalf of Legends Global?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you again for everybody to be here. Jose is going to pull up our team that's remote with Doug Thornton out of New Orleans. He was here presented last time. As well as Mike Kenny, our regional from Jacksonville, and then Bill Kruger with CSL out of Minneapolis, and then Aaron out of Boston with Populous, the architect. So I'll kind of give you some opening remarks, kick it over to Bill with CSL to give you the feasibility study, just a high level. This is the same information that we presented to you before, try to condense it down to get to those high points, and then answer some more questions that you may or may not have. I'll run through the renovations for the building, the event center makeup, the additional ice facility. It's not just a practice rink, it is an actual facility that can do other events. So we want to make sure that that is framed properly. It's not just a practice rink. It can actually operate as an additional 20 to 30,000 square foot space. So you could put Mardi Gras ball functions in there while you're doing a convention in the event center, while you're doing a concert in the arena here. So that was our strategy and approach to it. So, you got 'em up? So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Bill and make sure we have him online. Bill, are you there?
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I've had really choppy audio and video, so just let me know if you're not able to hear this. I don't see a presentation. Are you able to share that in your end, Michael?
Yes, we are. Tech's going to pull it up right now.
Michael, this is Doug. I can pull it up if you can't.
Yeah, we've got it, Doug.
Okay.
Great. Well, I'll just speak for a few minutes and then I'll turn it back over to Michael after this. So yes, I'm Bill Kruger with CSL International. I've been doing feasibility studies of this nature for projects of this nature for 30 years in markets all throughout the country, including actually a feasibility process. The charge, as Michael alluded to, was to focus on new facility product development that could really enhance the market performance of the Bay Center and in terms of the financial performance in particular, drive new economic impact, and better serve different event markets that are currently underserved in the Escambia County, Pensacola area at this point in time. So as a part of our study, we had a significant amount of engagement. We met with more than 50 stakeholders and user groups and some of the tenants at the outset of the project. We also then followed up with interviews and surveys of different types of event planners, convention planners, meeting planners, amateur sports, tournament and other types of event producers, and a variety of other events, including concert promoters and entertainment promoters, as a part of our data collection and our research and our outreach process. So very extensive in terms of how we do these studies throughout the country. And certainly we spent many months really delving into really determining what the market demand was and what the best type of product solutions that might be available coming out of this. Next slide, please. This is just a summary very quickly of some of the feedback and of some of the convention planners that we spoke to. So really the takeaway from what we learned from all the different event user groups that we interface with as a part of this process is there definitely is unmet convention demand, largely from more of the state and the regional groups. Our survey of more of a targeted set of niche national groups that can rotate anywhere around the country really demonstrated that most of them prefer some of the other destinations within Florida. If they're going to visit Florida, they're going to go to some of those common destinations for some of the larger events. So the demand for the larger event conventions was relatively limited. However, some of the smaller and the mid-size events, particularly from the state and regional marketplace, were relatively significant. However, their space needs and their hotel needs in particular, if you look at that pie chart on the right side of that page, this really underscores something that's really critical that needs to be considered, is that 90% of all the groups that expressed an interest to us in Escambia County and some kind of a product development in downtown Pensacola said that they require or prefer a headquarter hotel that's attached or is walkable within 1 to 2 city blocks. And so that feedback is really important because it ties together the need for a full service hotel to serve as a convention center headquarters hotel if you're really trying to penetrate into the convention marketplace. Next slide, please. So overall, in terms of all these other interviews and surveys and everything that we did with regard to the market demand analysis, really highlighted the fact that the demand segments that express the most opportunity in terms of unmet pieces of business that we could compete for were more of the smaller conventions and conferences and trade shows, in addition to a significant interest by amateur sports. So when we say amateur sports, we're talking about of the indoor variety that largely would be basketball, volleyball, dance, cheer, wrestling, pickleball. There's a whole bunch of those kind of sports that oftentimes will go in some kind of an indoor environment like that. And there's really a significant need for that. And then in particular, and also looking at, again, a potential new event center concept and a potential, practice sheet of ice as a part of that. The theory really landed on the fact that we could create a convention product, but we would definitely need both concrete floor space, carpeted space, and then hotel space all connected and all together. But the convention center, they have some things like that. However, if you don't have all that equipment that's baked into your facility inventory of equipment and spaces and FF&E, then that cost has to be borne by the event planner, or it has to be borne by the facility itself in order to convert that space to be able to be suitable for amateur sports. And so, next slide, please. And so then the recommendation really coming all out of this, just to summarize, and we've got all that detail in our large 100-plus page report, really landed on a flexible new event center type project that has an enhanced FF&E package. And what that means is you've got as a part of your building, the construction of that project, you're also purchasing all the equipment. So portable hardwood, maybe you have portable synthetic turf. You've got a bunch of nets that separate the spaces and create some additional spaces, but you've really got and you've got retractable seats and other things like that. So you've got this very highly flexible building that's really being designed and thought about in lots of different markets throughout the country in our experience. And it's really a way to maximize the level of activity and also maximize the revenue generation within a building like that. And an important part of that strategy would then be to lure and attract a full service 200 key or larger full service upper upscale chain scale hotel that would be attached via Skyway or connected to an adjacent parcel. And when you think about a full service hotel that's 200 keys or greater, they've already got baked into that building model, they've already got a substantial amount of carpeted conference space and meeting space in that model. And when looking at all the survey results from the convention planners that we talked to, a typical full-service hotel, if you were able to secure that under a P3 transaction, you would have the right amount of carpeted space to marry with this size of the event center space, which is concrete floor, but highly flexible for other activities as well. And when you put all that together, you're able to leverage the private sector investment in the hotel product to secure their carpeted space and marry that with the concrete floor space in the event center. So you're able to really go after where all the meat of the demand is in the convention business in terms of our program recommendations. But then importantly, with the practice ice sheet, what we did find is that the nearest additional ice sheet to Pensacola is more than 3 hours away. And so you've got all this pent-up demand for tournament activity and other league activity. And by adding a second sheet of ice, it really allows the base center itself, the historical base center, to really focus on those events that it really is designed for. And that, frankly, is spectator and entertainment events, concerts, family shows, ice hockey games, by the minor league ice flyers, et cetera. And so once you have 2 sheets of ice, you can automatically start competing for ice tournaments and major figure skating competitions. And so when you've got this product together, it's really allowing the base center to really do what's intended to do and focus on maximizing those entertainment events. And then you've got the event center that can do the conventions, the amateur sports and trade shows and other types of events and public shows. And then you've got the second sheet of ice that all of a sudden now can really bring in a lot of tourism and hotel room nights by virtue of allowing it to be a tournament building with all this pent-up demand within the region that currently is being very much underserved by the single sheet of ice that's offered on a seasonal basis within the Base Center itself. Next slide. This is the concept just to show you how you can convert that space within the event center concept. Again, about 55,000 square feet for that space. You got it. Here. Airwolf. and that is done to that, and very much counts the other of the base center that exists today. You'd have the secondary practice sheet, and then you'd have the hotel with their carpeted.
As we go through the technical difficulties, I'll recap this in a high level. I am tracking, we got 11 minutes left on the 20, so we'll make sure we keep your time. Bill, you there? I feel like the old phone game with the string and the tin can. So we're at 10
Michael,
minutes.
looks like the presentation went away and has come back up. If we want to go ahead and go to slide 17, we can start with the Pensacola Bay Center renovations and have you walk the group through the plans.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to touch on the performance projections real quick and then jump into that. We've got about 10 minutes left on our time. So I did want to highlight this slide. We talk about investment and ROI and what's big, what's going to, contribute to the community, from a tourism aspect and quality of life for our residents. So one point I do want to point out on this slide is you look at the direct spending and the indirect spending. Just from the event center and the practice or the ICE facility, it's a return of 60 million economic input. But you're also looking at 24 million additional monies in income, salaries that would be created or generated by additional jobs that are coming into the market. So now you're looking at, and that's on an annual basis. So for each year, you're looking there at 80 million plus in a return. So we're talking about an outlay of 190 million, and you're getting 80 back in year one, and this is a 20 to 30 year endeavor. You're going to get a good return on your investment here. So I'll jump into from there into the Pensacola Bay Center renovations. These slides, a lot of people have seen them, so I'm going to touch on them real highlight level. What you see is the Bay Center on the left, Event Center in blue, the ice rink in the green, and then the combined space is the orange that connects everything together. We represented a hotel on the property. We understand that that's probably not the best direction to go in, but we wanted to touch on that to show you that the event center, by the demand and drive from all of the users, they do want that type of headquarter hotel that's either close, walkable, or on property. Getting into the renovations for the Bay Center that we all agree on that needs to be done, touch on this real high level. We would open up the entryway for the main floor entrance and create a bunker club, so a premium. We'd actually add a grab-and-go marketplace concessions that's there not currently. That's highlighted in the red and the yellow there. In the green is where we would remove some seats where we could increase our capacity to 800. Why that is key is 8,500 is the magic number for a market our size to try to attract those next level talent. Now, obviously, we've got the Wharf that competes with us. The Mobile Arena is coming online here soon. Mobile will basically be the same size as ours from a concert standpoint, but the Wharf is 10,000 seats when they open their door. So we're right now at 6,800. That's roughly 3,000 seats. If we can get to close to 9,000, that puts us in a better competitive market for the concerts on that side. This just gives you a closer view of the Bunker Club. If you've been to an event and you've seen our kitchen, you know where our food comes from. All the food in the building comes from one kitchen. So we'd actually add a service elevator, a freight elevator, which the building currently does not have. That would access a second level and a third level to be able to have better movement, where we're moving food and beverage and other operational endeavors without having to interact with the public. Right now, we have to interact with the public. Everybody uses that one elevator. Moving on to the second floor, the rooms that you are in right now is highlighted in red. So this would become what we call our club loge level. That would actually have a kitchen facility on this side as well to be able to do private events on non-event days, but then have that higher next level premium option to increase revenue. On the east side, you see the purple highlighted there. That would be your next level, would be accessible from the top down. That gives you kind of another different level. So we're looking at 3 tiers of premium seating. Bunker Club, just imagine that's $100 to get in. This level is maybe $50 to get in. The purple on the other side might be $25 to get in. Now, those are just working numbers. We obviously need to do more market research demand. We've put some time and effort into that on what we would price out, how we would do it versus an annual subscription versus a per show sell add-on, that kind of thing. We can work through all that, but that's what's really going to generate the additional revenue that helps us get into the black for the operation of the Bay Center. Because again, as the operating model that we propose with all these renovations being done, we should be in a position to where we can restructure the contract for the Bay Center to be able to operate more as a P&L, where there's no longer a subsidy for the Bay Center. Then that subsidy then in turn goes back towards the debt service and can help our math problem there. This just gives you a close-up look for the club loge level. Moving up to the third level concourse, the orange is the atrium enclosed glass area that would connect the event center. The concessions are in the purple. Right now we have what's called belly-up concessions. If you've been to New Orleans Superdome or Jacksonville's going through renovations, or you've been into a building in other markets nowadays, a lot of it you go in, you grab your items, you tap, you walk out, you go. That's what all of these concessions would be. Instead of walking up to a counter, placing an order, them going and get your food, come back, process the transaction. Where that's key for us is time is money, money is time. So we can be able to improve that experience for the guests, but also increase our ROI with the revenue generation. Highlighted here is also some upgrades to the exterior of the facade. We've candidly called this the white elephant for many years. So we were going to kind of dress it up a little bit and put some time. And I think that goes towards where you're rebranding the building, so then you're getting the opportunity to get those naming rights for the building itself, for the box office, for other different areas that we've worked into the pro forma for that operating model. This gives you that $25 area that I was talking about as an example. It's just an additional, it could be just an additional food and beverage space, but it does have a kitchen on that side as well. So we're going from 1 kitchen in the building to 4. So we actually have 1 on the ground level, 2 on this side, and then 1 on the other side, east side. An example of what we talk about with concessions is points of sale. So part of this is adding additional points of sale. And roughly 1 point of sale can generate $1,200 an event. So the more that we add to that, the more speed of service that we can go through and be able to keep our price points to the market base. Some of you have been to Orlando or Miami or Atlanta or bigger markets. You're paying $18, $20 a beer. We're trying to make sure we don't do that here in Pensacola. This gives you an example of the marketplace where you grab and go. This gives you an example of a new club space, branded it with the Ice Flyers. It could be a naming rights. It could be the Mercedes-Benz or Crown Royal or something to that effect. We talked about the increase in capacity as far as the seatings count. So you look at where we would go. We'd create that stage pocket where you see the stage and the screen right now. We would move that back by taking seats out. Now, everybody's going to say, why are we taking seats out to get more seats? Well, it's about the configuration of stage placement. How does that impact hockey and Sunbelt basketball that are in the round? It actually gives them another premium area that they can do. If you've been to a hockey game, you've been on the flight deck, this now gives us another multi-tiered flight deck option that's very similar to what the Wahoos do in left field and right field. You get additional spaces. It can be a private space for an event, or it can be just sold to the public in general. I talked about exterior facade. This gives you an example of naming rights. Obviously, you dress it up. People are more enticed to open their checkbooks and write checks to support the mission. And this actually had some RGB lighting as well. So when you come across the bridge, coming from the beach, you're going to see the Base Center top lit up. When you're coming down I-10, you're going to see it. It's going to be a focal point that you're going to be proud of. On the back, this just shows you a rendering of the connection to the back side. We did talk about deferred maintenance and some efforts that we've done. Highlighted here is the $10 million that we're still finishing up, but a lot of it's made a huge impact with a brand new sound system, the lighting system, the fence around the parking lot. You'd be amazed at how many comments or calls I've gotten about that. But thank you for taking that rusted old chain link fence down. It doesn't look like a correctional facility anymore and that kind of thing. So, you know, a little bit goes a long way. So we did still factor some of that in where we did a full facility condition assessment, which identified up to 172 million, I think, in different things. Do you need all that? We've done without it for many years. We can, but we want to get out of that, you know, put some gaff tape or duct tape on it and actually fix the things that need to be fixed. Because if we're going to invest all this money, we don't want the pipes or the concrete that supports all that to break down. Getting into the cost projections, this gives you all itemized, going to highlight the high level. The Base Center renovations is now at 71 million. It does include that 15 million in deferred maintenance. Moving into the event center, this is a rendering from the Tech Park side that shows you the event center in the middle with the hotel or additional facility to the right. That could be a parking deck that's built there in place if we can't find another solution with the hotel property or the Tech Park, but it gives you those options. The event space, the event facility that we're talking about, this is the event level where it is 55,000 square feet but can be divided into 3 separate rooms. Bill highlighted and touched on bringing in sport court, hardwood court, retractable seating, and all those different configurations where this could be utilized. You have a lot of multi-use space as far as pre-function with the lobby entrance area and plenty of back of house. The way it is configured right now is to maximize the loading space and the backstage space, so both buildings butting up to each other with the Base Center on the left and the Event Center on the right. It gives you that functionality to be able to perform and do the shows. This gives you the breakout rooms that are on the next level up above the event level for the Event Center. So it doesn't have that 20,000, 30,000 square foot big ballroom to do the big functions, but it does give you some of those additional spaces. And that's where Bill with CSL had mentioned the hotel would come into play with those additional meeting spaces would actually supplement and augment this to be able to make it work with the math problem that we have. These are some examples of trade shows, sport court facility, the atrium entryway pre-function space. Again, new, modern, updated, not 1980s like we have right now. This is an example of a basic layout where you've got the high ceiling where you can still rig and do conventions, banquets, Mardi Gras balls, you name it. But you can also do the sport competition from basketball, pickleball, volleyball, wrestling, you name it, to in another exhibition floor. We do booths, exhibition shows with about 100 as our max here. This can get you up to 250 booths. So. I think I'm over my time. I'll wrap this up. So we're 84 million for the event center, the ice rink. Again, it's an ice facility. It can be also utilized. So when we're not, I would categorize this as a building that can do ice. It's an event building, but it can also do ice. So think of it as an additional auxiliary space that would add to that. And the decision that's before you is it worth that $29 or $30 million that we have out there? I think it is appropriate aligned, but with the campus-wide approach that Doug's going to touch on is that it does actually operate in a positive revenue stream for the building. Projected cost is $29 million there. Again, getting into the campus-wide approach, and this is where I'm going to kick it over to Doug real quick. Doug, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Michael. My name is Doug Thornton. I'm the president of our Legends Venue Planning Services Division. I work with municipal and private owners like yourselves to support new or renovated venue development, like what we're talking about today. And I think you can see we've spent a considerable amount of time with our consultants, CSL and Populous on the design side, and feel comfortable that these improvements will provide accretive value to the community. So Michael has taken you through some of the architectural plans just to show you, some of the things that we've looked at in terms of incremental value. If you can go to the next slide, Michael.
Actually, if we can go on and stop it there, I think we're at time for you guys. Is that okay
Yep.
with the board? Because we do have one more presentation, and then we do have questions after this. Any objections? I just want to make sure that we're keeping us on track. So if we can just table that and then probably loop back to some of that for questions.
Absolutely. What he was going to go through is the same information that we provided to you before. This was trying to condense it high level to get it to you.
Okay,
And we can address those in any of the Q&A session.
perfect. We appreciate that so much. We do have one more presentation. The Escambia County DMO group representing the hoteliers in the area. Ted Ent is going to speak on behalf of those folks. We appreciate you guys coming here today. We know that you provide wonderful hotels for people to stay in, and that allows us to levy this money to invest back into the community. So,
Madam
thank you.
Chair?
Yes, sir.
So, is them, who's representing a Visit? Is there,
So Visit is not on this for today. They call themselves the DMO. It's the hotel group here in
also, this is
Pensacola.
not Visit?
No,
Visit is
sir.
not being represented here today?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you to all of you. I guess I'll call this the dais today, the collective dais, for your support in getting us here today. As you know, we have studied this topic for almost 50 years. There have been multiple studies done over those years. Uniquely, almost every study that's been done has come back in one way or another very similar to the other ones. There are a few things that make this opportunity different in this space and time. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you and your council for your vision in seeing that this could be the catalyst for us capturing the connectivity of Hollis T. Williams, the redevelopment that's happening at Jefferson and North Palafox, and the redevelopment of the Bay Center with an addition of some event facilities could tie all that part of our city together.
Excuse me, Commissioner Ray, did you have something you wanted to share with everybody on that?
No, when the time is, I'll share it.
Okay.
I also want to thank the county commissioners for recognizing the value of our tourism tax. Passing the 5th cent, I believe that we did that in 2020, has put us in a position here today to have this generational decision and conversation. And we do see, as Madam Chair mentioned, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our community. In my career, this will probably be the largest public investment that our county makes. And so it needs to be thought through very carefully and thoughtfully. We have reviewed all the recent studies that have been done, and despite some people's opinion, we don't really dispute any of the information in either one of the studies. But what we've been able to do is extrapolate the information from both those studies, plus the previous studies that have been conducted, as well as our experience as the tourism community. And the DMO is not just the hoteliers. There are also restaurateurs represented on that, and also other constituents that participate in our tourism economy. And what we know is the future of tax collections is a critical piece to this. Due to the size and nature of our community at this time, due to the kind of airlift that we have, we believe there's an opportunity here to do a multi-purpose event center that can do indoor sports, conventions, conferences, trade shows, all the things that we listed in the letter that we sent to all of you. We believe that in today's world, a proper design that can be made that can satisfy all of our community's needs for at least another generation. And I go back to something I heard Mayor Reeves say about a month and a half or so ago. He said, in an ideal world, we'd be able to afford everything. A standalone, purpose-built convention center, indoor sports. But the reality is we have to make the best decision for our community. And our group believes, after careful consideration, our own analytical work, as generators of the tax that will largely be used to pay for this, that we believe a multi-purpose center is the best opportunity for us. We also believe that because of over 500 plus rooms of new development, either under construction or in the planning stages right now in downtown Pensacola and the related area, that adding a new hotel at this time is not a good idea. There's also the Grand Hotel next door to this facility that likely has a giant redevelopment opportunity if everybody can agree to do an expansion and renovation of the Bay Center. So we believe that from a tour, or from a lodging capacity situation, we have more than enough inventory. And I'd like to speak to one thing that I don't think any of the studies that I've read, and some of these studies go back to 2012, the nuance of our historic Pensacola, our community, gets missed in these studies. We know now that when people come here for soccer events, basketball tournaments, dance competitions, baseball tournaments, and other things, a lot of those people go to the beach first, which is where my organization's hotels are. And once that starts to fill up, that compression comes back across the bridge. We want to see a facility built that can create compression that fills both sides of the bridge at the same time. We want to leverage downtown Pensacola, and all of you know, because I've said this to all of you, both in public and in private, we spend a lot of our own energy marketing downtown Pensacola at Innisfree Hotels, even though every one of our hotels, with the exception of one, is on the beach. The value of downtown Pensacola is greater than any feasibility study is ever going to garner, because they don't live here and experience this with us every day. Couple that with the fact that we got ranked the #1 beach in the United States by the Reader of Condé Nast Traveler, and the fact that one of the things that those readers pointed out was the historic downtown Pensacola made our beach experience special, leads me to believe that if we make the right decision here, all these new hotels that are coming to downtown are going to benefit from this development. Will there be a day someday where we may need another 250 hotel rooms? Possibly. When that day comes, it probably won't need to be a P3 investment, because when it pencils, you guys don't have to participate financially. Our organization's never asked for a dime. We've built over $500 million worth of hotels in Escambia County. So with that, I would like to say that, again, we truly appreciate y'all coming together on this. We think that the tourism community for Escambia County is completely ready for this next step. We're excited for it. We have studied it. We've talked about it. The fact that everybody's in a room ready to make a decision speaks volumes about your leadership in our community. We want you to know how much we appreciate that. We want you to know how much we appreciate everybody's efforts, including all the people who have done all these amazing studies. And I do want to tell you, I've read every page of every study, and there is a ton of information our community is going to be able to use for years going forward that we can pull out of those studies as we make future decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will open it up for conversation. I will express that I hope that we can come to some sort of agreement on how to move forward so we can memorialize something that we'll be able to vote on at one of our upcoming May meetings, because I know everybody's been working on this for a very long time.
So your goal to come out of this meeting is what?
I would like to see us agree on a path forward. I think we can probably all agree that the Bay Center needs revamping. So I would like to express that. And then can we look at building a second or a third facility? And if so, what type of facility, or what data do we need to know what type of facility?
That sounds good. You know, for the record, Madam Chair, since you had a question, I think Visit is the organization that's tasked that we give millions of dollars to decide who's going to put heads in beds, who's going to be here. They should be a part of any conversation that we have before we make a decision.
So unfortunately, Visit Pensacola did not reach out, nor did they send any documentation for consideration. They are tasked with spending the money, not generating the money. So I thought it was important that we have the hoteliers that are tasked with generating that money to be here as well.
Well, I disagree. They are tasked with generating the money. It's an investment. But nevertheless, I mean, we're not going to have that debate.
Bay Center specific debate? Do we all agree that we want to revamp the Bay Center? Is that anything that someone has conversation on?
Some people are shy to talk, but not me.
That was agreed upon 20 years ago.
This building's over 45 years old. Some of us on this board weren't even born yet. I was in grade school. It's obvious, if we have a vision for the county and city, that we have to do something here. What we do, I agree with the mayor, depends on fair share and where we get to what we want to do. I think all the things that sound great, I agree with the DMO on the hotels. I think we probably have enough of that right now. I would like to see the Grand at some point come back to life, but that's a separate topic. But we've been doing this for a year, all right? Last legislative session, and this is why I'm putting this out, there was discussion on using TDT for a variety of things. We probably need to do something fairly soon if we're going to do something and decide what that looks like. So in short, I'm in favor for doing something sooner than later, and I've committed to you, DC, that I'm willing to do something with the city, and I hope we can get to yes on something.
Mary?
So just to be clear, Commissioner, if we wanted to have them elaborate on anything, are we just doing discussion now, or can
We can ask questions as well.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, if you have a
Sorry.
specific question for anyone that presented, I would say let's open it up.
So if we could, I think it's important because I think there's these two key conversations of what buildings, what's the second facility and all that. And so I'd love for WT to elaborate, as they did in our previous meeting, on what the DMO just mentioned, which is, I know there's a lot of debate publicly about, is it a convention center, is it multi-purpose, but it's also 2026, and I think there are examples where maybe that isn't as big of a debate as it might seem publicly, and so I know that WT can elaborate on that some, and you touched on some of those examples. And then the second thing, while you're up, I think that's the big conversation is financing. And I think a big part of this, and a lot of success that other cities and counties have had, is not just opening the wallet and saying, okay, if the county commission was willing, here's how much bed tax is available, and this is what we've got to build. How can we compound that investment on the private side? So I don't look at a hotel participation in any form as a subsidy. I think what we're saying is that's more money going into the pot to be able to enact a vision. And so I guess just, if you don't mind briefly touching on, number one, the multi-purpose aspect of, do we need to be debating between convention center or sports facility, or is there that hybrid approach? And then secondly, maybe a little bit on the TOD and TIFIA opportunities, talking about some of those things about other dollars coming into play that aren't the county, the city, CRA, or otherwise. Thank you.
Sure, happy to. So like the mayor said, when we say convention center, we're actually what we realized when we were sitting, that we were all talking about the same thing. We're all talking about a modular facility that can host as many events as possible. Having said that, there will be some events that you will have to let go of as you decide and you refine your structure. So if you do want the facility to perform indoor sports, there's a certain capacity that you can meet. And with that, you will let go of certain events. So no, you cannot have everything, but there is a world in which you can accommodate large amount of requests. And what we saw in the resident survey was people talked a lot about the Foley Event Center. That's apparently where Pensacolians go for some of these things right now. So the existing facility with the square footage that we put in our report, yes, we anticipate that it should be able to host indoor sports tournaments, basketball, pickleball, volleyball, some of these, and any person who's going to bring in their private dollars, they are going to want to invest in that. And on that, on the second note of private dollars, the public facility, whether it's a civic center, whatever you decide to do, that is an anchor. All cities or counties or public investments, usually, whether it's a library, they fund the anchor, whereas everything around it then is the private sector can bring. So you guarantee them that here's the facility we're going to bring, here's our programming, so here's the visitor footfall. Now your private dollars come in to uplift that hotel or to uplift that mixed use or retail and whatnot. And we've heard a lot about connectivity. I think the DMO makes a good point. It's a great idea to bring the downtown to the waterfront and the waterfront to the downtown. To that end, when we looked at scenario 4, the whole reason we even included that was because we do feel you guys have a you guys have a very vibrant downtown. There's a lot to offer. It's a true downtown in many ways. And the way to do that, the way to bring that into the Bay Center area district or to the beach and all of that, is to consider connectivity as a whole. So when we look at the TIFIA and TOD, when we look at that TOD option, that specifically emphasizes, are we creating bike lanes, right? Our vision when we put up that concept was that as your visitors come, whether they're conference attendees or indoor sports attendees, they come, They get dropped off over there via bus or whatever it is. But then after that, it's walkable. They can get a bike from there, and we don't need to add more cars on the road. So really, the cars on the road are the Pensacolians. And then this unlocks for us two funding tools. One of them is financing. So TIFIA is a financing tool. That is something you have to pay back. What is good about that is the interest rate. So right now, if I'm a private developer and I want to come build here, without a TIFIA, I'm going to end up paying close to 7 or 8 or 9% interest rate. With TIFIA, with that area becoming like a zone, now the interest rate drops to like 4%. And the whole point of USDOT encouraging these is they like the idea of walkable, connected, safe, and whatnot. And then the other is grants. So USDOT does a very good job of encouraging people to undertake at least grant planning studies to encourage walkability. We did hear in your resident survey that people emphasized parking, and they just didn't want any new development to come in and cause more problems. And we think that's a fair point. And we do think that one of the issues right now, as you guys are more aware than we are, is that your downtown's right there, but it's not connected. So if there's a convention center, this is called enabling infrastructure. What we're saying is that through a phasing approach, you don't have to, Rome wasn't built in a day, you don't have to build all this in a day. But as you build your facility, as you increase the programming, as you start to collect more revenue and whatnot, we do think that there's space to build this enabling infrastructure and make this a true destination that encourages people to walk and move around and really, because it's right there. Your downtown's right there, but you really can't get to it right now without a car. So scenario 4 looks at that.
Mr. Mayor, so in your vision, would it be like one facility that would have the multi-sports and the convention into one?
I was making the point I was making is there's a lot of conversation around should it be a convention center, and including by me, I'll be honest, walking into this process, I always worry at the government level of trying to please too many people and then end up having half of a convention center and half of a sports facility that doesn't really function well for anybody, right? That's kind of the natural thing is, well, it's less confrontational, but we end up with something that maybe the net product, the net deliverable isn't as good. So I was skeptical about that, but seeing examples of, hey, there is the ability to maybe have some harmony between bringing in conventions that are using hotels during the week and eating at restaurants and supporting our local small businesses during the week, and then sports on the weekends. That capacity might be the net value. So again, I'm no architect. I think that would happen throughout the process. I think this early in the conversation, we may not need to dive into a fork in the road yet to say, are we going to have a sports facility or are we going to have a convention center? Because it may not necessarily, one, you might be able to do them both, and it might just be early on that, to have to make that determination.
No, just want to get clarity. No, it makes sense.
Thank you so much. I think that if we don't have connectivity, we run a risk of having too many separate locations of event. Like we want people here to go to Palafox and go ahead and fund the businesses that are our local people and such. And I think that the DOT part, that third for the grant, I think that we can't really move forward without that consideration. As much as I love walkable and bikeable, and that's what everyone's not able to do that, right? And so, I think of those periods where my parents always walked and biked and were very active, but then there's a point where you just can't. And so there's got to be some kind of movability, even if we if we use this as a hub, and maybe we activate the old train center right there and use it as a hub, and we even have just trolleys going the east-west route and the north-south route, so that people can make it up and down to all those locations that we are putting in play, the various hotels, et cetera, without having to relocate here. So I think that without that, we're really just continuing to do these, a chunk here and a chunk there. I think we have to have that kind of connectivity that doesn't rely on a person's ability to walk or bike. There's got to be some stuff like that. I say this every time, but my mind always goes back to Old Town Alexandria in outside DC and Virginia, and you've always got up and down King Street, you've got the trolleys running. So people walk it, surely, and they park, but for those that get tired or can't do it any longer, there's that ability. So I think that even, the ones that we have going now have really enhanced on Saturdays and on those evenings, and I think that we enhance in that for sure. And that will continue to not make everything have to be here. So the follow-up to this is the fact that I agree completely with Mr. Ensign that I don't think that we have to fund the private sector. I think that if you think of even Strong Towns and the way it goes is that we do that anchor, as you guys have just reiterated. We focus on the anchor, transportation in this location, and we let it naturally flow from there. I think if we force too much here at once again, we don't know what the economy is going to absorb, and then we once again risk, running our friends and family who are on Palafox out of business, or the new extension on Jefferson, and we have too many things that we risk that way. So I think that we have to look at the transportation portion and using the federal grants, hopefully from DOT, to kind of enhance that idea. So that would be
Noted.
my.
Yes, ma'am. I would
Thank
agree
you.
with that. Commissioner Berry?
Thank you. And that, I think that would be a fantastic focus for the city, would be the transportation and the parking aspect of it. We are tasked, unfortunately, with some degree of capacity of how much we can actually do. And I think that we do have to prioritize what's most important. We're not going to end up with a product that makes everyone happy. That's a fool's errand. So, for my vote, the money going into the renovations at the Bay Center and the adjacent facility, we have to set priorities as to what it's going to be. And for my vote, it's going to be a youth sports, a sports type facility. And, much like one of the speakers mentioned, OWA, that event center, I've spent a lot of time over there the last few years, and they host conventions and trade shows during the week, and then they have thousands of families there playing basketball and volleyball on the weekends. And I think that type of facility, is exactly what we were looking at, hypothetically putting at Brossenham a couple of years ago. That didn't happen, but the fact that the facility didn't happen at Brossenham wasn't a function of there not being the demand and the financials not making sense. It was, some of the location and some other factors, but the room generation equation that does go into the repayment of the debt placement, that's what's going to generate those nights, based on the statistics. I think that's a fantastic use. So the renovations at the Bay Center, the adjacent sports facility. I think there's some conversations between Mr. Harris and our budget folks, as well as our bond counsel, about their ability to maybe with some adjacent help from the county, be able to underwrite another the ice rink. If we're a conduit to that, and if all that they need from the public sector in that area, in that scenario is space, that to me that's a reasonable use of space, as long as we're not devoting our debt placement capacity towards that repayment or towards the debt placement. I think we can afford to do the center. We can afford to do everything here that's being proposed that'll take it to the next level, and we can afford to do a full-on adjacent facility with the capacity that we have, and then it's going to be, that's going to basically eat up our capacity. And like I said, if Mr. Harris can work that out with bond counsel and underwriters, I don't have any issue devoting some space out of this acreage for that facility. It will have a benefit, but we can't end up making everybody happy. So
I would agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to go back to your question, just so I can get clarification. So you asked kind of a broad question, whether we supported, I think, Bay Center improvements or?
Correct.
Okay. Because I think there's already been money set aside, if I'm not mistaken, like $75 million. I think you all took $25 million to do artificial turf. So clearly, county has a strong interest in youth sports. I've seen that. But I thought there was like 75 million set aside for Bay Center improvements. Is that correct or not?
So conversationally, I mean, that was the conversation at our board. We didn't really get into the actual debt placement capacity. That was at the time assuming a debt placement capacity of 100 million, which is,
Right.
Even at that time was a conservative number. Our capacity is greater than that. So, you know, when you look at the numbers, I mean, we do have the ability to put probably closer to 150 million in, not 100.
Okay.
But that, and like I said, that if you look at some of the cost projection spreadsheets, that'll cover everything in the facility that we're in, plus everything associated with the facility adjacent to it. But that will kind of tap that out.
Okay, and that goes with the numbers that were shown earlier, 71 million roughly for renovations of the Bay Center, and then 86 million is what they projected for that facility, the additional facility?
I think the number associated with the convention center was a little bit greater than the one associated with the, one more focused on the youth sports might have been more in the 65 or 70 range, but yeah, more or less, Charles, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So just so I'm sort of clear on what Commissioner Berry just said, so are you suggesting that all of the options, forgetting about the hotel for a minute, ice rink, event center, and Bay Center are doable, or was it the event center and the Bay Center improvements?
The event center and the Bay Center are what I'm saying is financially doable to the county from our side. I mean,
Got it. Okay.
And like I said, I don't have any issue, helping as we're able with the conversation with Mr. Harris. I think that conversation is still progressing between he and his investors and the bond counsel and the underwriters. And if we're, like I said, if we're just a conduit that's not tapping into our capacity, then if the only public portion of that second sheet of ice, that structure, is allocating some acreage for it, then that's reasonable to me. I mean, that wouldn't require probably a formal PPP or anything, but just conversationally, that is a good public-private partnership. They're financing the facility. We're providing some dirt for it, and that seems reasonable.
So that was one of my questions, because I have looked at that model in other cities, as we look at this overall project. And it does seem that there, it's usually a public-private, and typically it's something like land or some kind of facility, or subsidy, I should say, to a facility. So, yeah, I don't know what that looks like, and obviously that's something that we would have to discuss. But I feel like, a second sheet of ice in our community somewhere is a great idea. How we can facilitate that, whether it's the Bay Center property is obviously one option for that, and if the county decided that, under their lease, that was something they wanted to pursue, that would be great. But I worry a little bit about if we are working on parking and other aspects of the support, that we need for a bigger project, how does this all kind of fit? And so I guess that's my question. I don't know how these things are typically structured in other places, but
in the space for it, that the public side could put in. I mean, it doesn't have to be adjacent to it. It could slide under 110, or a little bit north or a little bit west of literally where we're sitting, but somewhere in the general vicinity.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, and there are definitely options for sure for that. I very much like the transportation aspect of this, and trying to see what we can do to improve, our ability to reduce congestion. We did ask for $500,000 for a congestion study in downtown, because that's something that I think we're going to be facing, and we actually need to look at that more closely. I think this can be part of that discussion, and how we can utilize this property potentially for financing, and potentially to help, address some of those future issues, I think is important. So for me, I would love to see the city of Pensacola, really dive into what that could look like, and sort of explore those options. I know when we heard the presentation, it was, well, our next step there would be to talk to FDOT, which is a little scary, but that's fine. If that is part of it, we could certainly make that one of our next steps. But you know, to really follow up on that, and then I do believe that really narrowing down what we can do. I am a big in this multi-purpose space. I believe that sports are important, but I also believe that creating a business environment in our community is going to attract more business activity, and that is certainly a priority of mine. I want jobs for people that are here in our community, particularly our kids who, you know, tend to go off somewhere else. I want them to be able to find those opportunities here. I think having the right business-related space for companies that want to, you know, relocate here, headquarters, you know, they typically need some kind of convention space. So I just want to be careful. I think it's all, you know, we can do it all, I believe, or at least we can do a lot of it. I think there may be some limitations. But I guess my question is, what is the next step in really looking at that particular, you know, issue as to what is the best fit to be able to do both of these things? Who does that? How do we do that? You know, it would be great today to have some idea about how we might move forward on that. And then obviously the Bay Center renovations, that's the county's purview, your decision. Clearly, I mean, I'm very supportive of it, and I think it's part of this overall project. The question, I guess, is, you know, you have a rendering here. What do you, is that the final rendering, you know, kind of what is the next step from the county's perspective? I do think, though, it all works together. And I think that without really knowing what's happening in the, you know, in the second facility, will hinder really maximizing the renovations of the Bay Center. So it would be great if we could move this all forward together. The hotel, you know, I think from the private investor standpoint or private owner standpoint of that hotel, this is the time. I mean, this is the time that that hotel can be part of this conversation. And I think it is important because it can have its own meeting space. And if that hotel isn't part of this conversation, then we're going to have to figure something else out, because I think both studies were very clear that we need a hotel nearby, if not exactly adjacent and connected, but nearby, to make that facility, certainly for conventions, work. So I would really like to see that conversation continue. I'm hopeful that those who own these properties would want to be part of this conversation. So anyway, those are sort of my general thoughts on all of this, and I've talked enough. Thank you.
Commissioner May?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, and I agree with you. I mean, we have to create the business climate. And Mr. Mayor, you know, I agree with my colleague. I mean, I think we probably have talked about it, in which we, you know, probably could figure out the financing in doing it. But Thad, he was very right in that across this country, USA Volleyball, they are private partnerships that are partnering to provide those activities, and you want the private dollars. You know, I've just not heard in the studies from any one of these people, and I'd love to hear from Michael Capps, that anyone has said that you have to have youth sports downtown. As you said, we want to create this business climate. We want conventions. We want people who are spending money in our downtowns. The infrastructure of a downtown is not conducive for a youth basketball tournament, a volleyball tournament, playing all night and walking downtown. I mean, you know, so if it's the efficiencies brings about that it's one facility, I think that makes sense. But to look at our prospect of bringing young people down and putting them in a downtown, I mean, could you imagine having, you know, thousands of young teenagers running downtown because they're leaving this facility in our downtown? I mean, I think we have to think those things out. And I think also, you know, in the model that we should be looking at, how do we partner with some of these people that are making it work? I mean, if you look at Hoover, if you look at Bo Williams, if you look at most of these facilities, there's a lot of private dollars that have gone into those facilities. And as my colleague, Commissioner Berry said, you know, there is some government whether it's land, whether it's E-dates, or whether it's something to incentivize those companies to go, because we do know that the private side is going to be more efficient than the public side on ROI. And so, Madam President, I support everything that you said. I agree with you. We want the business climate. I think we had a conversation. A youth Little League coach is not going to pay the $18 for a beer in a convention center. I mean, he's just trying to get a Subway, a Wendy's burger, and a 12-pack, to get his kids to the hotel. And so that's just the reality of it. And so I've done enough of these to
The 12 packs for him,
understand.
right?
12, well, 16. But I'm open. I mean, I think I just hope, Mr. Mayor, that we would look at it. I think, collaboratively, even if you're looking, at civic centers and at some university, if the school board, I think they should be a part of the conversation. If we don't have the exact funding, if we're having graduations, if we're going to have this, if we're going to look at bringing state tournaments here and those type of things, the school board obviously should be a contributor in being a part of the whole conversation. So, I mean, there's not a real guidance, but Jennifer, I do agree with you. I mean, when we look at it, we got to think about our seniors and my mom and your mom that can't walk. We got to think about our children that we don't want unsupervised in a bar environment. I mean, there's a lot of things that we really should talk about before we make final decisions and have the vision. And thank you, Madam Chair, the vision of where do we really want to be collectively between, my opinion, City Council, County Commissioner, and our school board.
Michael, I did have an additional question because I very much agree with Commissioner Berry. I don't know that the value of the second sheet of ice is worth $30 million, but you mentioned it would be more of a building that can also do ice. How much of the success of the multi-purpose or event center hinges on that second facility that is also housing ice?
So the event center can operate without that additional space.
Okay.
The framing of the context of that facility is just to show you that, you are getting more bang for your buck. It's not just $30 million for a piece of ice. So it's $30 million for an event building that can do ice as well. It'll serve as a training facility for the team, and we're completely correct. Most of those facilities are done with a public-private partnership. Most of them are done with 2 sheets of ice right next to each other, and they're not in a downtown area. So indoor sports, they're typically not built in a downtown area. They're somewhere else in an auxiliary location. But you go back to the point of trying to please everybody. If we try to please everybody, you built every building specific to it, the math doesn't add up. So that's where we're trying to provide an economical way to do that. But, from a programming standpoint, there are a lot of events that we currently do in the arena here that we could do in that ice facility. We could also do it in the event center as well.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying if we have the opportunity to get a regional convention that comes in with 1,500 attendees, that needs to do a banquet for 1,500, a general session for 1,500, breakout rooms for 10 rooms for 300 people apiece, or whatever that breakout might be, we can do that and still do an Art of Fashion that benefits Covenant Care. We can still do a Mardi Gras ball that benefits the Sheriff's Foundation. We can still do Mardi Gras, Crew Lafitte, Areola that weekend. We can still do those events in that facility. But again, we would try, it is built to try to primarily, the operating model that we gave you was the ice itself. So anything with those other events that we're going to be able to pick up, it's going to be on top of it, and it's just going to be a value add.
Okay, noted. Thank you. Commissioner Sternberger?
Yeah, so I'm not like everyone else here. I think I already know what I want and what I like. And I'm in the direction of sports tourism. I think that's definitely the direction we should be going. We already have an anchor tenant at the here at the Base Center with the Pensacola Ice Flyers, and I think a second sheet of ice is us taking a step toward more sports tourism. We already have the Northwest Florida Hockey League. And we have also a skating league, or the Greater Pensacola Figure Skating Club, that does programming nationally recognized through Learn to Skate. So there are a lot of reasons we should keep pursuing this. We're not going to have to create demand. We already have the demand. And like you said, we don't have to build it all at once. We already have something that we can make money with that I think that can work. And that's my feeling about it. I don't think we have any I guess the only question I would have is if that second sheet of ice was also a multi-purpose facility, would that defeat the purpose of having a second sheet of ice? Would it? No?
I think that's a great question for Michael. The question was if the facility that is housing the second sheet of ice is also the main place for the practicing, would that defeat the purpose of it being a multi-use space? Is that what you asked?
I understand the question. I don't think so, but I do want to ask Doug to chime in because with Legends, we have a division, Edge Sports, that does these types of facilities, that works in these complexes. So Doug, if you're on, can you chime in on this one?
Yes, thank you, Michael. I've been listening in. I have some observations, and then I'll answer that question. First, I think every day we wait, the cost goes up. So the 71 million for the base center, the 84 million for the event center, and the 30 million for the ice rink are cost projections based upon today's dollars. So the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to get. And I think it was Commissioner Barry who said that you have capacity now through the revenue that you would bond out, to do the project. The second thing I would offer is that if we agree on the site, and I think there are a number of reasons to agree on the site. One, you've got what I call venue convergence. What does that mean? That means we have synergies in operations by operating all 3 or even 2 of those venues under one operator is going to save you anywhere from $1 million to $2 million a year. Said differently, if you tried to locate the event center or the ice rink or a combination thereof or the base center somewhere else, and they were displaced, it's going to cost you more to operate over a 20 or 30-year period. That adds up. So you've got venue convergence there. You've got a site that I think everybody seems to agree works. The third thing I would offer is that you don't have to decide on the ice facility today. I think everybody agrees that the Base Center needs to be improved. We know that. Number 2, we know that there's a need for convention and youth sports, recreational sports space. And I heard the previous consultant talk about the flexibility of some of these spaces. We operate these spaces all over the country. And the way that we have programmed the design of this, and Aaron can speak to it from Populous, it is meant to be usable by trade shows during the week. I think someone said that earlier. And on the weekend, easily convertible to a multi-use basketball facility where you could put 4 courts in there, 8 or 9 volleyball courts. There's all kinds of things you can do. Meeting rooms in the space, those have been programmed in so that the conferences, the businesses that would come along with the trade shows can have their meetings there. So it would be multifunctional. It wouldn't be one-dimensional. I think that's important to know. So to me, someone said next steps. I think even if you don't authorize the funding for the construction, provide full funding for the construction, we at least need to get started with the design process, because that's going to take anywhere from 12 months to 14 months. And Aaron, you could speak up on this, but we're going to lose that time. And we could phase in the design. It doesn't mean that you have to go build it, but if you started designing the improvements to the Base Center, and then concurrently with that, maybe the improvements to the event center, at least you would get a head start and you wouldn't lose your window of time. Because right now, time is money. And we know that construction costs are going to go up anywhere from 2 to 5% per year. We saw it after COVID. We had a huge spike, 25% increase. And you have a finite source of funding with your revenue bonds, okay, that can support this. So the longer we wait, the more difficult it gets. So I'm just offering that. You don't have to make the decision on the ice. And let me say this about the ice. There's a demand for it. We have substantiated that. Bill Kruger, through his analysis, has substantiated there's a demand for ice. You've got a hockey team that's very successful. They need a practice facility. which means we need to move them out of the Bay Center to do what? Free up dates for other shows that make money for you, okay? The second thing is, I was over there a few weeks ago, and I saw, it was 9:30 at night, and I saw 12-year-old kids coming out of the ice rink while grown-ups were coming in for the adult league. So they're using that ice day and night. So we know there's a demand for a sheet of ice. And we can figure out, someone said earlier, how to finance that. I think there's some ongoing discussions about, can that be a public-private partnership? Is there a way to do it with the current hockey team owner? There may be. So I think you could at least get started on the design for the Bay Center and the Event Center, and then concurrently think about holding that pad, for the ice rink and the hotel, which could be phased in at a later date. Those are just my observations. Sorry to take so much time, but wanted to express that.
Commissioner May?
Hey, Doug, thank you for being here. We certainly appreciate it. And I heard Councilperson Patton say, how important for the convention center is the hotel? Like, if you're saying that we need to get moving, I mean, what are the critical ingredients that we need to move forward, in your opinion?
Well, I think Bill can answer that. I would say that there's a need for a headquarters hotel. If you're going to be competitive to bring trade shows and conventions, the exhibitors want sleeping rooms connected to their exhibit space in order to be competitive. Now, you've got hotel inventory in downtown Pensacola, but it's best to have that hotel on site. Now, I can tell you, and Bill, you can weigh in on this, the hotels that are being developed in communities like yours around the country are probably relying on a lot of underwriting from cities and states, municipal governments. Probably 50% of the cost is going to have to be supported in that regard. There are ways that you can do that. There's tax rebates, there's ad valorem rebates, those sorts of things. But Bill, speak to the importance of the hotel.
And Doug, when Bill speaks, can he address one other thing, and that's just parking? Could we address the hotel and the parking?
Yes, parking is something that we studied a little bit, but there's going to have to be more discussion about parking. And there were a couple of different options, I think, on the site. Aaron can probably speak to that more intelligently than I can about the conditions there, but parking will have to be addressed long-term. But Bill, let's talk about the importance of having the hotel, the size of the hotel, and what you're seeing in other communities like this in terms of underwriting from public sources.
Yes, thank you, Doug. It's very clear. I mean, I mentioned this briefly, and I just want to underscore this again, that through all of our surveys of the convention planners, the state groups that rotate around the state, the regional, and some of the smaller niche national groups that can go anywhere in the country, I mean, emphatically, they told us that they need an attached headquarters hotel or one within close walking distance, which really means 1 to 2 city blocks in your case. And if you remember that statistic in that pie chart I showed you, 90% of all the groups that had an interest in bringing an event to Escambia County and downtown Pensacola told us that they prefer or require. Specifically, 60% said they require, and then the remaining 30% said that they would prefer that. And so you've got a very limited group that if you don't have that headquarter hotel attached of a quality type or immediately adjacent, then you're going to lose the ability to compete for that business. So there are other events that are flat floor events like trade shows that have more of a local component, that have less emphasis on needing to have that attached headquarters hotel or adjacent headquarters hotel. But the whole point is, with the multi-purpose design of an event center, you've got the ability to not necessarily rely 100% or the majority of your activity that has to be the traditional conventions, conferences, trade. This additional capacity and equipment to be able to plug and play for sports and other types of events too, that really makes that model work. And so it could be productive, and it could be, you could be getting the events. Let's just say you don't have this headquarter hotel in the near term and you've got that space, you've still got the ability to tap into some groups that don't require that, that could shuttle or could, utilize other types of hotels in the marketplace. But then you're not left with this underutilized building because you've got the multipurpose flexibility and the equipment to be able to market it towards all other events while you're trying to get the headquarter hotel figured out. And, as far as a hotel, I agree with what Doug said, that in this day and age, unless you're in a marketplace that has a very large metro area, that has a precedent of rates that can be achieved through full-service hotels of $300 a night, markets like Pensacola and Escambia County, if you built a new hotel and those private partners are going to require some kind of incentive. The cost to build a full-service hotel these days are usually around $600,000 per key. That has dramatically increased over the last decade, where we were talking more about $200,000 to $250,000 per key to build a full-service convention quality type hotel. And so that gap leads us to a feasibility gap that the public side would have to bridge that by the tune of a donation of land, some tax abatements, some tax incentives, plus some additional capital or an equity that maybe would be $10 to $20 to $30 million to trigger that private sector investment of another $70 million to pull off your $140 million hotel. But the important thing is you're really leveraging private money. So you need to think about the ability to attract that type of hotel is not just to get a new hotel, it's really to make all these pieces work most productively, to really enhance the financial performance of the Bay Center, to make it much more profitable than it is today, but importantly then, all those work together to be able to generate the economic impact, the room nights that will fill up that headquarter hotel and then compress throughout the rest of the downtown and then to the beach. And so that's really kind of like the magic sauce of all these pieces together. That's why the hotel is important, but if you do this multipurpose event center, it's not necessarily critical for the short term if you don't have that hotel coming in at exactly the same time. You could get up and running, it would generate more interest, your feasibility gap, meaning the public side incentive that you would have to bring to the table, would likely be lower because you've got all this investment that has occurred and is built and is performing well. And so you're going to get more interest by the private side partners at that point in time within a couple of years after opening.
Aaron, maybe you can address the parking really quick.
Hi,
I know you
I
took
was
it over.
hoping to make I was just hoping to add maybe a couple of things here. So I do agree with you, Doug. I do think the longer people wait, the less the 75 million brings or whatever the pot of the money is. So I think action is more important than inaction. We did provide some examples. I know Mayor D.C. Reeves asked us to talk about them, but if you are able to somehow pull up the Wilmington Convention Center, which is actually operated by Legends in downtown Wilmington, you will see it's a column-free, really a large room that can be modified in any way possible. And those are the types of examples that we provided in our report. So we all agree that the facility is multi-purpose. It needs to be able to accommodate many things. It's a modern facility, and it's modular, it's column-free, it's very flexible. And I'm sure Legends, actually more than anyone, is fully aware of all these types of facilities throughout. Regarding, I think, the hotel, there are 3 current RFPs in the market, and I know we talked about this one in our last meeting, that the Fargo Convention Center, their RFP was unable to really get off twice. That was because it lacked a hotel. So we really would emphasize that we do think that it's not just a nice to have. In fact, and we would need to do further studies before we say this, but that's a question that which procurement lends itself to better development. Should you package it with the hotel? Should you package it without a hotel? I personally think, just a gut feeling, packaged with the hotel, the convention center will attract different type of developers. I think that it'll do good for the whole area throughout. So those are just some thoughts I had as we were having the conversation.
Was there an update on parking? I know Commissioner May also asked about parking.
We did look at the conceptual site plan we provided does provide on-site parking. I think we've listed exactly the amount of spaces in our report, if you would like to refer to that. We also provided another model. So there's one model where it's the convention center and the parking. And then there's another model we provided that looks at a convention center, a mixed use, a parking garage. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. Again, you're actually in a very unique spot where you have, you're near downtown, but somehow have these sites around you that are not developed. So as long as you agree on what you need, there's various configurations for where to put the hotel, how should we connect it, and what should happen. And I do think the hotel would be great for the Pensacola Bay Center as well, because the whole idea is for all these facilities to be symbiotic, to not cannibalize each other, perform as one place in generating foot traffic, generating, revenues, bringing in more visitors. And the great thing about visitors is they leave at the end. So you don't need to build a lot of infrastructure such as multifamily and whatnot to go with it. They'll come, they'll spend their time, spend hopefully their money, and that's it, that they're gone. So we have looked at parking. You just need to figure out which type of facility you want, where you want, and then we can go ahead and put them in different configurations.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I want to reiterate the fact that when you bring in that transportation factor, you're bringing in money that can leverage that parking, could potentially leverage. And so that was not something, that is the point to their fourth in that column, is that money actually does leverage grant funding to come in and help with that. So I think that that's critical to know. And I'm just, just a point here. I think 5 years ago, we're on a rotation for brownfield convention, like this whole southeast, right? And so Escambia County, it was their turn to host in the city, and there was no space. And when we bring those people in, and we bring in these kinds of conventions, we are bringing in professionals, academics, people that then look at our location and want to come back with their families. I just think that we are missing the boat on this one a little bit if we overlook the importance, at least, of a mid-size or convention. I know that I've got probably 5 this year that I go elsewhere for, and so I go to all these other places in Florida. I've got one in DC, one in Colorado, one in I'm going to these, and I don't always stay at that adjacent hotel at all. But it is an adjacent hotel that will have the meetings coordinated with. It is a headquarters, so I do think that I think that these are symbiotic and do go hand in hand. But I do think we have to consider opening those doors on leveraging the transportation money that would be available to help us actually hit that. I think that every one of us knows how frustrated our constituents are over parking downtown. Like, we can't just bring in more and not address this and not enable people to get around that kind of thing. So I think that, I think it's short-sighted if we don't couple all these things together.
Jennifer, I would actually, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Do you know how many conventions that we deny a year because we don't have the facilities? Since you brought that up, the Brownsfield.
The Brownfields one was pretty interesting to me because that was we've got, 5 Superfund sites. This is like where they want to be able to evaluate this kind of stuff, and we've not been able to host. We don't host any of the education conventions. We don't host, we don't host things. Right. So I think that it's critical. I spend a lot of money going elsewhere to these conventions. And I can tell you, we do tours, we eat good. We're definitely bringing in money into where we're going. And I think that it's also important when they pointed out who's purchasing what hotel rooms when they come. And I think that to that, all my kids play sports. All of them always have. They play all the way through, right? Of anything they can. Yeah. But when you're traveling with a handful of little ones to sport events, you're getting the cheapest thing you can to handle everybody.
Exactly.
And when you're traveling for conventions, that's absolutely not what you're doing. We're always insistent that we have very nice rooms and very nice places. And I think that it is a different clientele, and I think it is a professional clientele that brings more look on Pensacola for the future.
I agree.
Thank you.
Councilman Wiggins?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have we looked at what will be the cost to maintain any of these convention centers or anything like that?
It was listed on the report from CSL. I think they had an annual breakdown of revenue and then also of maintenance in there as well. I don't specifically know which page.
I didn't see it. I have to go back and look again.
Councilman Bear?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think parking is a big issue. I didn't really see any identification of parking in the Legends study. And it was mentioned in our study, the trolleys, but trolleys, we pay a private company to do that. I think you'd have to have massive expansion to have more trolleys, and I'm just not sure if that's the solution. I will say, expansion of seating and upgrades at the Base Center, I think, are essential. So I definitely agree with that. I think beyond that, it's a challenge. Even though our airport, as you saw from the study, is rated well against other regionals, it's still pretty expensive to fly in and out of here, and we're limited. Often I have to fly down to Fort Lauderdale to fly back up to Pensacola, and we have to do crazy things like go through Atlanta when you don't have to. And so I think there's still challenges with conventions and bringing conventions here. I like the idea of regional or statewide conventions. Even so, most of the conventions I go to, things with League of Cities, there's a hotel, and that's where the convention space is. So I really think, and this was identified on the slide, there's a large proportion of the people that want either strongly favor it or require a hotel to be nearby when it comes to a convention. So I think it makes sense to have a hotel with convention space in it. It was mentioned hockey. We were I run Keep Pensacola Beautiful, and we were the nonprofit of the month in March. There were 4 home games. So for an anchor tenant that only has 4 home games in a month, that doesn't seem like a big anchor to me. So I'm not convinced that hockey is an anchor tenant that generates a huge amount of income or revenue for the Base Center at this point. Not denying the fact that there's a demand for ice. But I kind of feel like spending $30 million on that extra facility at this point might not be feasible with the funds that Commissioner Barry was talking about earlier. But I think it's definitely something there's an interest in. I think we need to, if we're going to do anything with that property where we're talking about putting the additional facility, we need to vacate, abandon, whatever, that loop around the Base Center, because I just think that's an impediment to getting back and forth. You're not going to want to walk up that ramp every time you have to get back and forth. So I think that's a thing we need to look at as well. And I know that's something that's possibly on the table, but I think my biggest concern is just parking and where are we going to put all the cars. Thank you.
Mayor Reeves?
Did you want to go? Yeah. Go. He was before me, sorry.
Thank you.
Well, I'll start with one probably silly question, and I don't know who to ask of the consultant, but I keep hearing about this flex space. Sounds like they're similar in size, can handle lots of uses. What is the difference between a convention center and one of these event centers, specs, slash flex space? Is there an easy way to describe that or delineate the difference?
I'll start, and if she has anything else, she's the expert in this as well. We're talking about finishes. So, a flex event space, it's not going to have your chandeliers in the ballrooms, that kind of stuff. You're not going to have the fully carpeted floor space. You're going to roll out carpet on a temporary basis on an event-by-event needs. So you're looking at a Volkswagen Bug versus a Mercedes. That's
Gotcha.
kind of a layman's way of putting it. Is that kind of?
Michael, can I interrupt you? I'd like either Bill or Aaron to address that. Aaron designs convention centers and flex spaces like this around the world. So maybe Aaron, you start, and then Bill can build from what you comment on. I think that's a good place to start, because there is a difference, but this can be designed to where you can accommodate both, and I think that was the idea.
Yeah, that is correct, Doug. And, the flat floor event space that we've designed, 55,000 square feet, is great for all the uses we've kind of outlined here: sports, convention center, booths, multi-purpose expo hall type of space. Michael's correct, the terms of the finishes that you would expect in some of those spaces would be a little bit different in an event or in a convention center. The other aspect is kind of a programming one, which is where the hotel ties in a bit, is the access to a large, 18,000 square foot ballroom type space, which has those upgraded finishes and is usually complementary to that expo hall floor and your breakout meeting room spaces. So I think when we look at the event center, we're designing all the key aspects you need for the most diversity of uses that can happen on that flat floor space. Supplemented with the breakout meeting room spaces, all in one package there. And then relying a bit on a hotel or adjacent program space for that ballroom function, those other large meeting type spaces that would have a higher level finish associated with them. I also just want to make a point, you know, when we're looking at this and we studied the ice, the arena, and the event center, we're really looking at complementary compatible uses. So Doug used the term, you know, venue convergence, and that's really important here because one aspect that the ice does, and again, it doesn't have to happen on day one, but could happen later, is it frees up the arena for a multitude of other uses, and including events like tournaments where you could have uses happening on both of those spaces from an ice standpoint. So really complementary uses, and thinking of the whole site as a campus together is kind of the foundation of what we were looking at. I also, just to touch on the parking real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Bill. You know, we looked at the parking and the capacity around the site. There's both available capacity that the arena uses currently to the east. I love this conversation about transportation and connectivity. Enhancing that to downtown, to Halifax would be great in any way that could happen. That's a current issue, I think, that exists today just with the arena. And obviously there is a displacement of some parking on the east side of the site when we go to look at these future developments happening there for the event center and ice and hotel. So I think it's a critical thing. I think it does deserve more study. Certainly traffic analysis and more detailed parking inventory analysis can happen as the project goes forward.
And I'll just add one thing, getting back to the fundamental first question, which is what's the difference between a convention center and the event center model? The primary space is virtually the same size between the other convention center kind of model versus the event center model. About 50,000, 55,000 square feet of space. There will be 2 air walls at a minimum that could separate that into 3 equal-sized halls. The biggest difference with the event center is the fact that as a part of the construction budget, you're purchasing all the athletic equipment, and you have storage facilities that are appropriate, like a climate-controlled storage place for the hardwood, portable hardwood that you could pull out. So when you're trying to maximize your interest in attracting sports and recreation type activities, it's very important that you have that equipment, because otherwise you could have a convention space that's big enough to accommodate them, but somebody's got to pay to bring in all the courts and rent them or purchase them. And so what this kind of model really maximizes is both the amount of different diversity of events that you can attract and really compete for, and it also maximizes your operating performance within that space in terms of financial performance, because you're able to attract more events, retain more net revenue at the end of the day because you already have all this equipment ready for them to plug and play. You've got many tournaments out there that won't consider a place unless it's got the dedicated equipment for them. If they're expected to bring it in with them, they're just not going to do that, many of them. So that's why this model is very much an enhanced, flexible, hybrid, multi-purpose event hall, which is differentiated from the convention center. And importantly, when you look at traditional convention centers, 9 out of 10 of them throughout the entire country have to be operationally subsidized by the public sector owner of that facility. And that's the reason for that is because these conventions can choose anywhere to go to their events. If they're small enough, they can fit into a hotel's in-house meeting space where they're not being charged rental rate for the actual event space. Instead, they're just being secured and locked in with the room block that they're going to provide by the hotel. So you're competing with those kinds of activities, which your ability to draw revenue in the building by conventions is lowered because of a lot of this comp space and the fact that so many communities are vying for that hotel room night business, that the financial aspects of a convention center normally always place you into a situation where you need to have operations subsidized. When you've got the ability to draw in other events that are willing to pay higher rent for their space, like the sports tournaments and amateur sports and trade shows and consumer shows and festivals and things like that, by having a hybrid type building, that can allow the overall picture, the financial picture of that building to be much more self-sustainable. You could break even or do better is what we projected by wrapping that into the operations of the Bay Center, and also maximize the amount of economic impact that you could generate therefrom. So by adding the headquarter hotel to that mix, it just allows you to be more competitive, not really for the amateur sports necessarily, but really for the convention and conference trade show activity to really maximize the opportunity at the site with respect to that.
Okay, we do have a few more questions. Councilman Moore?
Yeah, I'll land my plane and not ask so many open-ended questions, but, yeah, well, thanks. Obviously, I'm encouraged to hear. It sounds like there's a lot more consensus. I was afraid we were all kind of pushing and pulling in different directions, but it sounds like there's a lot more consensus once understanding kind of the nuance between the different details. So that's encouraging. Do agree. Let's get to work. We've talked about it and postulate and theorize long enough. Let's go and get to work and make something happen. Bay Center, past time, past due. I guess I do have one little nuance there that it's dissonant still in the logic. Some of that's explained there as far as the second sheet of ice. You know, what kind of thinking about what is our objective here. Some of our objective is solving the, you know, roughly $1 million subsidy every year. That's obviously not the whole objective. Spending $200 million to solve $1 million subsidy doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So there's obviously a lot more on the objective there. But expanding or replicating the model that we've got that we're really trying to solve and expand and diversify in the form of just putting a second sheet of ice, to me, there's still some dissonance there that doesn't make sense, even if it opens up space for the, you know, the Bay Center. Kind of pivoting off one of the principles there that Mr. Ent mentioned, you know, as we've heard, that the second sheet of ice could potentially be a revenue generator, and understanding that there is some constraint as far as our capital stack that would be required to get all the deliverables. It does, if I heard Commissioner Berry correctly, it does make a lot of sense to me to maybe allow the expert in the world of ice in the hockey team to, you know, let's give them a favorable lease on some land that works, and let them shield the taxpayer from the risk that goes with constructing and operating and maintaining a second sheet of ice. That makes a lot of sense to me. So I'd love to see the Bay Center renovated. Love to see a second one of these flex facilities. And not sure what our next steps would look like. It does sound like we've got a lot of conversation to have as far as parking. But thank you very much. Appreciate it. Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just have one question. So would the second facility also serve as a convention site too, or just the convention would be here at the Bay Center?
So looking at the models that CSL gave us through Michael Capps, we're looking at $71 million investment into the Bay Center for upgrades, an additional $84.4 million for an event center. It sounds like the type of event center that we want would support Monday through Friday business conventions. We would bring in business companies, and then on the weekends we would be able to flip that for sporting events, which I agree with. I think that's a great model. And then the next thing that we have is the second sheet of ice. Listening to everyone, where I believe that the most amount of consensus is we would like to move forward with the Bay Center upgrades, a second facility, an event center that is flex space, continue to negotiate with Greg for that second sheet of ice for a public-private partnership. And we need to address parking. It sounds like the city is willing to jump in to help with the parking, their transportation, and then possibly the hotel issue with the Grand, working on some things there.
Yeah, well, I'll give a couple updates and answer some questions. First, I think from the WT slide, to try to answer the question before we get out of here of what are the next steps, I always like to kind of reverse engineer, like how do we end up where a shovel's in the ground, right? I think there was a very strong, generally unanimous suggestion that this ends in an RFI or an RFP in totality, meaning I'm not sure the strategy of designing something ahead of knowing what the private market wants to invest, for example, would be prudent. And I may have misheard that, but in my mind, per the WT slide, is we should probably decide collectively as a community what we want in general. And there can be alts to that. It could say this or this, and here's how much money is going to go in, and here's X dollars. Tell us what you can do for us. And that a bid would come back with design, construction, management, all of those things, and bidders would put a team together, to say here's here's what we'd be interested in. That seems to be the consensus way that these things, especially when you're trying to leverage private dollars, come to fruition. I know it's in that next steps slide, so that just wanted to mention that. Second, I think it is important for us to identify if we want to do a second facility or not, because to even do a renovation independent of knowing that you're going to do the second facility would cost taxpayers money, meaning you're going to do synergistic things, and there's people on this call that do this for a living. You might do a different renovation to the Bay Center if you know you've got a facility coming in next door.
Right. Is there anyone here that doesn't want a second facility? Is there anyone that's opposed to a second facility?
So I think that's an important decision to make, because you can't fully understand what the renovation of the Bay Center is going to look like if it's still a mystery that you're going to put a facility in next door. So I do think that synergy of construction matters from day one, and so I think that's important. It's been mentioned, city participation and what that looks like. You guys vote on funding here, and you guys vote on funding at the city. But I think it is appropriate that when you see that ROI slide that Michael showed, talking about that money that comes back in the form of bed tax, and that comes back in the form of sales tax. So I think facilities itself going the direction of bonding those revenue streams to get the return on investment makes sense. But certainly conversations around parking, where there's a revenue stream and a potential ROI for the city, I think the CRA, and as it pertains to the Grand Hotel or other surrounding area, there's a fair conversation to be had there. I'd even say, just as the administration, advocating for the elimination of that off-ramp. I think the last price was $2.5 or $3 million. I've had initial conversations with USDOT. We do know that we have the clearance to do that already. It's been tested. There's not enough activity on that off-ramp to merit its existence. So, we're happy to get a grants team together and see if we can go find federal, state dollars to just go ahead and get that eliminated, because if we know there's a second facility, it's going to have to happen. So there's other peripheral things that certainly I think this body, the CRA board, could entertain that make are more relevant to the expense and revenue exchange the same way that the bed tax and sales tax is. Placemaking, Lumen, you had mentioned, hey, fast food restaurants and having these things, available. Understand, the reason people go to Foley is because they did placemaking around Foley. It's not because they want to do a convention center out in the farmland. It's because OO went and built hotels and built restaurants for people to. So I don't want to act like it's got to be one or the other. I think you can build place, and I think it was mentioned, retail. The desire for retail could help facilitate some of those events. I think that's important. I think it's important to point out that ice time would actually increase organically if there was a second facility for no charge, meaning this ice will be open more often. I just want to point that out. I don't know by what percentage, Michael could probably figure out, because now those conventions and those Mardi Gras balls and Pensacons are all going to be happening next door. So there is an organic increase in ice time that's going to happen no matter what. And I just have some questions on financials. I tried to email back and forth with Michael on this, and I think the ball was in my court. But if you were looking at this business-wise, the ICE facility says it's a third of the cost, but it's going to create 79.2% of the revenue. I find that a little off, and I see insurance expenses $57,000. I need to find out who that insurance broker is for a facility of that size. And so again, not saying the numbers are wrong. I just mean I'd love to dig deep, not here on that ICE facility, but it may be a moot point. If the general consensus, which I would totally agree with Commissioner Barry and what's been mentioned over here, if there's an underwriting of private dollars that helps make that happen, I wouldn't be against it. But but I would want to ask those questions if there was going to be public dollars. The lost convention data, Visit Pensacola, I do know has some inventory on that that can answer your question directly. That they keep a log of people who call and we have to tell them sorry, I believe. So they have some information. And so bottom line is, how do we get this to market? I think that's really the question, especially if we get some consensus. What are the next steps to get this to market? Is it an RFI in totality? Management, design, construction, who's interested, and private dollars that come into play. So I think that's kind of the next step from here, is to say, how do we actually kind of move this ball forward? So anyway, it's been a great conversation. Thank you, guys.
Wes and Allison, what do you guys need from us to put something on the agenda that we can vote on to get this ball rolling?
I would say just direction as to Base Center, the extra building, flex or not, and then we can go from there. We can give it up to procurement professionals and see if it's an RFI or RFP, and we
Okay. We all wanted flex space that we can use for conventions during the week and sporting events and concerts on the weekends, right?
And Mr. Mayor, so in having that conversation, I think there's a real consensus from our board, it seems like, to move forward with these facilities. But how do we engage, the parking and the other things that the city would be required for? So we'll all be singing from the same sheet of music when we go out.
It's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that probably has to all happen concurrently, meaning, because is there a second facility or is there a third facility? That's going to determine where it goes. I've been a proponent publicly of putting the parking garage on the tech park. It's a tech park that's been empty for 20 years. And again, it's not all or nothing, but I imagine if we're going to attract a business, they're going to probably need to park employees somewhere. So that could be a whole nother conversation of another revenue stream with partnership with Florida West or PEDC to say we probably have a little bit better thing to sell at the tech park if we say, hey, we got a parking structure for you, ready to go at $40,000 a space. So I guess what I'm saying is it's hard to say how many spaces is it and how much acreage is getting taken up by, how many facilities. So I think this all would have to kind of come together based on, how big is the facility, what dirt is left, and how many parking spaces are needed. But I think I can't speak for the voting body on the budget. I can say administratively, I certainly think the argument makes sense for there to be a city investment into parking because we can generate revenue in return on that parking. So I think that's certainly a fair philosophy moving forward that the city.
Right, and I
could
just wanted to
participate
know, I think the chair was trying to get staff to see how we incorporate it, but we know infrastructure is critical, transportation is critical, parking is critical, before we even start the building. So, I think it has, I don't know if that's Mr. Stafford and Mr. Marino kind of talking together, talk that out, and us have a meeting, but we need someone to, guide the ship and bring us something back that we can all have a consensus to vote on.
So in your experience, is that something we would do like a memorandum of understanding with? Like, hey, we're going to pursue this and the city's going to pursue parking? Is that something that we need to move forward?
I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to be.
Either one, or Allison.
Yeah, no, in my thought pattern, you would get the administrator and the city manager together to kind of put something that at least, there's one more meeting where we can talk and have that consensus, because we have to have that. We have to have a roadmap to where we're going. And I think that we're having our consensus as a county. He's having his as a city. I think, quite frankly, Mr. Mayor, we move forward today more than we move forward in a long time in having these discussions. But we do need to give it to the administrators who get paid to kind of put things together to bring it back to the policy people and to get an agreement. That would be my thought.
We do have topics available for our May committee meeting of the whole, which would have been May 7th. Is that something that you feel like you could have prepared by then between county administrator and city administrators?
Madam Chair, I'm all for this, but I'm not sure I think that's a little farther down the road. I think what we need to agree to, which I think we have conceptually, is the Bay Center and a second center. And like Doug said, our board probably needs to start moving forward with design. That's, I think, the first step.
Mike, I agree, but you can't do any of that without parking.
Well, but I think that will decide where we do the parking. We know that will be part of the design concept. Where I see that as an issue, the hotel with DMO put out, we believe something will happen. Those are the unknowns. But I do think we need to go to design sooner than later, because the time is just, so the board here, our group has already decided we all agree on two things, at minimum. There's two things we haven't agreed on, right? We don't know. I'm not opposed to the ice either if it fits, but I
So
kind
do
of
we
like
want to
Commissioner
add
Berry's.
to your point, as a third thing that we agree on, we continue negotiating maybe a public-private partnership for the ice?
I like what Commissioner Berry said
Right.
on that.
I
And
mean,
then
I
I think
think
after you
that-
get the design back, you're at a place to go back to the city and say, here's what we got, here's what we need from you or other entities. But I think right now, the more time we conceptualize this and don't start moving forward with design, we're in a tailspin. So I think that's why I think we need to start moving forward.
Commissioner Berry?
That conversation is going on without our board doing anything, so I just let it continue. The conversation between the bond council and the underwriters and, Mr. Harris and I believe Legacy's also involved, or Legends is also involved in that conversation. That's ongoing, so I don't think our board has to do anything until they figure out what they can do.
Noted. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just to respond to that, my only disagreement is if you start designing a facility and then you're going to go to the private market and say, which of you would like to incorporate dollars or, into this project, they're going to say, well, man, I wish we would have done a different room or that. That's why I think the WT discussion of saying the new wave of doing this is let's bundle everything together and then test the market with it, because ASM may say, hey, for management, we want to put in X, and some other company may say they want to put in more. Or a one developer will say, well, we'll invest this in the hotel, or we need this subsidy, and another one won't. And so I just would hate to get half-baked on one aspect of this that then limits our ability to be able to leverage
Well,
private
you
dollars.
want to have another meeting to kind of finalize what we want before we move forward, or what were you thinking?
So
Yeah.
I feel like we're on the same page as what we want. The question is next steps, and I agree, because whether we're putting in almost 200 million or 87 million, I want more than 10 million from whoever is helping us with this. So if we do put it out to bid as a package, I think we have the opportunity to capture more of those dollars. But with your point, I think we need to move forward as quickly as possible, so. Yeah.
Commissioner Cole, I agree with you, but I agree with the mayor. And I mean, design is going to be determined by the amount of money we have. We can't design it and then figure it out. We got to figure it out.
So we could do an RFP or an RFI for design, build, and management. And then that would wrap all three, and I think that
Will
would
you
give
guys
us.
pull up that slide? Sorry, I'm sorry,
Yeah, no,
Commissioner.
thank you.
Will you just pull up that next step slide one more time for the WT? No, there's a kind of a next steps of like, hey, regardless of what you decide.
Yes,
Yeah, if you'll just pull that up, sorry. That might be helpful. I apologize, Commissioner, I didn't mean to.
No, I appreciate it. If there's a visual to go, let's throw it up. Perfect, thank you.
Will you kind of walk through that again one more time?
Yes, of course. So depending on what the project objectives and what we agree the success metrics are, is it, what does success look like to you? The maximum amount of private funding that comes into this? Is it that we want transportation to be addressed? Is it that we want the tech park to generate dollars, or, we need the hotel developed? So that's something that we should agree to. Determining site control and zoning clarity, you would need to do this regardless. I think this is kind of where this conversation is going anyway. I think the critical piece here is when we presented 4 scenarios, I think some of you have already made this point, it's probably charting out that, okay, if we decide to go with scenario 3, right? Scenario 2 will lead you to scenario 3. I think everybody agrees that scenario 1, standalone convention center, is not desirable. So if you go to scenario 2 with the idea that maybe in 7 years or 5 years, we're going to be at scenario 3, and then we'll see if it's even worth exploring scenario 4 in another 5 years, right? So having that clear vision that is your project the convention center plus hotel? Is it your convention center plus hotel plus parking garage? Is it the mixed use? That will really help us do the next part, which is transaction structuring, because that allows us to make those assumptions on how much value capture there is, what each source funds and what it cannot, how many grants are coming in, if at all, right? Then we say that here are some revenue considerations also worth exploring. So this goes in with your transaction structuring, that we would offset basically your cost with your revenues. And then we would test the market with the concept. So we would tell the market, here's scenario 2. This is what we want to do. And the market, in our experience, developers do a really good job of telling you, I don't want to do this because there's not enough foot traffic. Give me a mixed use, and now I might do it. So that's what happened in Fargo Convention Center. And that's an active RFP that is, I think, under selection right now. There are 3 current RFPs that we highlighted in our report, because we think even if you're not doing that, that is the market giving you live feedback on what they are preferring right now, on their methods, on the type of square footage. So we would test out that concept, and we would tell the market, okay, what do you think we should do? And then they'll come back and they'll help you refine it. Then you would probably go into an RFP.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I have one question for you. I
Yes,
wanted to
of
ask you earlier. You had given some examples on the USDOT grants. Do you have any examples of what the federal government has contributed in dollars in any communities? I know this is
Yes,
kind
no,
of
absolutely. So we have a handout that maybe I can ask the city to send to you that we prepared for our last meeting, we normally see what we call like a layer cake. Nobody uses this all or one sort of approach. People try to offset any type of revenue that's coming in, value capture, naming rights, and then you add in your grant or whatever TIFIA that you've unlocked or any TOD enhancements that you were able to do. So it depends also on the size of your project. We can tell you that these are very competitive grants. You are opposite, this site is opposite an area of persistent poverty that does usually make it lend itself to a little bit more sort of grant funding, not as much as if you were in the area of APP. So we would need to look at that a little bit further. You have a few different things going for you. You have a freight trail, you have a trolley stop. So, how are people going to move around? How do any of these pieces tie into the connectivity? That would also determine how many grant funds are unlocked for you. I'm not sure if I made it more confusing by saying all that. We did have a handout prepared that has this in a table a little bit more concisely. So I can ask the city to share that with you. I want to say that's a public document. There's nothing.
It is. I think we're saying the bottom line is if we're going to go to market for $200 million of taxpayer money, potentially, I think listing, this is what we want. This is how much money, you want to certainly respect it's your vote on bonds and what you want, what that number is, but you can put an RFI out that says, here are the buildings we want. Here's an alternate. How much parking do we need? And we have up to X dollars. I mean, that can be, and then you roll that out to market before we make a decision on design or on management or something like that, that ends up actually hindering the ability to maximize taxpayer revenue, or taxpayer dollars. So I think that's what the deliverable is that they're describing is balling it all up and running it out there.
I agree with you. But when we're looking at finding dollars, testing the market, is that CAPS or is that your group or are they in tandem together? How do we kind of put that together? Mike, can you help? How would that work?
I think that would be whoever we go with for the RFI, correct?
Well, we got to construct the instrument to go out.
Well, right. It would be us, but we're not taking it to the developers and asking them to develop.
Mayor, I would see the dollars that would be used too would be under the request of the city, don't you? See that from you guys? Since it would be on the outlay of the Bay Center, I think that part of the request with what I'm hearing from the USDOT and TIF would come through a city request, right? Yeah.
But there would be funding, but there would be funding sources that we could go after too. Federal dollars.
Yeah. I don't think the RFI's got to identify every funding source because I think who's going to respond to that RFI is also going to be very attuned to those. For example, the TIFIA thing that was mentioned that now you can borrow at 3.5% or 4%. Well, the private market's going to come and say, hey, we'll do this pending this money, contingent upon us getting this. Whoever's going to be the applicant is going to, I think, help guide some of that capital stack conversation too, right? They're going to say, here's our conditions based on these things. So we can be working on those, the off-ramp.
In your mind,
we can be
the
working on
developer
getting
could
rid of
be
the
the
off-ramp
manager.
right now, right? If we know that this is the direction we're going to go. That doesn't need to be part of the RFI, but I think just getting something out there where we're looking at this thing in totality gives us the best chance to use dollars that aren't our taxpayers' dollars.
Absolutely.
Those are the best dollars.
Yeah. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to be rude.
No, absolutely. I just wanted, since you asked the question, and I do want to kick it to Doug because he lives in this space now. I think you have two great teams here that can collaborate and work together, but there is going to be a point where you're going to have to say, okay, here's the lead. Who's taking it? Is it the county and what source they want to go through, or is it the city, what source they want to go through? It could be where, from a legend standpoint, and Doug will chime in on this, is that we can handle it from start to finish. We have everything in every division, every area that can go from procurement to operating. But it could also be where the county puts together the RFP, the scope, everything that they want. They handle all that, and then we respond just like they would respond. The city could do the same thing on their end with the parking side of it. I think, though, it's kind of convoluted because it is separate projects almost, but it is being brought under one umbrella. So I did want to say you do have the advantage of having two great teams here that are already boots on the ground with a lot of work in the market that can really get you to that finish line fairly quickly. Doug, did you want to chime in for a minute?
Well, I would like to ask Bill. I'd like to ask Bill Kruger to maybe address this question of the RFI, RFP. I guess my immediate reaction is that the hotel itself can be, we could do that with the hotel. We could do an RFI, RFP for development of the hotel. I think we know what is needed in the Bay Center. That's pretty clear. I think we have a consensus on the event center. That's probably not going to change. And I don't think that you're going to get a hotel, if you have a hotel developer that's going to come in and say, this is what I want to see in an event center, it might be something that is not compatible with what you want that event center to be. I would think that you could move forward with the Bay Center renovation. We could address the parking issue during the period of the design, start designing the event center, and then you could solicit proposals for the hotel separately. We do that. As Michael said, we do that as a company. We can handle that for you. That's what Bill does. Bill has done many of these, RFIs, RFPs for hotel developers. So Bill, I'd like you to comment on what I just said and what you're hearing from the group.
Yeah, Doug, I would agree with you that normally the interest is maximized by a potential private hotel partner if there are commitments to proceed with some additional facility investment. They don't necessarily, what the hotel partner is looking for is, does their return on investment on that hotel asset, does it pencil out? And in this day and age, for this type of a hotel project, it's extremely likely that you're going to need to have some kind of a public subsidy by virtue of a P3 to get to the level of return on investment that the private partner and their dollars that they're bringing to the table would achieve for them. So part of this gets complicated under the scenario that we're proposing, in that you've got an event center which would largely be the concrete floor space portion for a convention that may utilize the carpeted space that's built as a part of this hotel. But largely what you'd want to do is just get everything else designed or committed to, at least with the other project, and then that's the best opportunity for a hotel RFP. So I do that all the time, and kind of advising on these kind of transactions, writing the RFP documents, getting them out to market, having interviews, maybe even starting with the request.
So I think we were, sorry to interrupt, I think we were referring more to the RFP and the RFI for the project as a whole, not necessarily just the hotel portion. Councilman Moore, I think you had another question?
Oh, no.
No. Okay, yes, ma'am.
So on this topic of moving forward, I do feel like there's some tension still in my mind about having something somewhat designed to go out and then, or just, going out and saying, what do you think is the best from your perspective, private developer or somebody who will come in and manage and run this thing. With all due respect to Legends, who has done a fantastic job in helping with this whole process, I personally would, if you're going to RFP it, and Legends is going to actually put in their proposal on it, it would seem like that RFP should be done by somebody who's independent of that process. That would be my thought on it. So the question is, given we have consultants that are working with Legends and have provided the information to the Bay Center, or on the Bay Center to the county, we've got the consultants that the city hired. I mean, I would really like the idea of the consultants, not necessarily, Legends working together to come up with what that RFP should look like for, and I think we could commit as a city to funding whatever that would take on our end to be able to help, with that process, with the county and city working together. I just want to say from my perspective, I'm one vote on the council, but I definitely see the city supporting this project. I think if the county is willing to bond the TDT tax and just, sort of look at those facilities and help get those across the finish line, it's our job to help support it, both through hopefully parking, and I do like the idea of the TOD district, and or CRA funds for the surrounding areas. You know, we do need the connectivity to downtown. How do we do that? What infrastructure needs to be put in? So really working together, you know, to try to put the whole package together to move it across the finish line. So those are just my thoughts.
Great. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor.
And I think to land this, going the direction of let's get, you know, myself and Wes or David, and let's try to jot down what has been, let's take the guardrails that came into this meeting really wide. And again, I appreciate really better than expected of trying to get that narrowed. Let's do the best we can to jot all that down, come back
Exactly.
to you guys. And I agree with that as well. I mean, ASM, I assume, is going to be bidding on this. And if they're going to have a financial commitment, I would fully expect that they're expecting a long-term contract. So those dominoes would need to be thought through first. And I certainly would support your votes on city council, but support some additional consulting on our side that may be in tandem with that to-do list that we put together as city and county, that make sure it makes sense, and maybe bring that back to both bodies to consider as, hey, did we get this right? Is this the general scope of what everybody would want to see in some potential RFP or RFI?
And I'm sorry, I'd agree with that, Mr. Mayor, because, I mean, our procurement specialists, our administrators, our legal team, they need to be able to work together to bring it back. So, Allison, I agree with you. I mean, we need to get our people to put it back and then get it to our experts. I do respect having subject matter experts, because none of us and none of our staff have ever done this before.
Wes, do you feel like that's something that could be presented at the CAL on May 7th?
We may need a little bit more time than that.
Okay.
To get everybody together, get all of our thoughts and processes ironed out. So I don't think May 7th may be a little bit too aggressive.
June, okay. Perfect, thank you. Anything else from anybody? This was extremely collaborative. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. Meeting adjourned.